and welcome to Incorruptible Mass. Our mission here is to help us all transform state politics. We know that we could have a Commonwealth that truly represented the needs of all the residents, the 7 million people in our beautiful state. So today we are starting a new season. This is season 6. We are starting a little bit of a new format. We're going to be taking some deep dives into different topics. And our first topic is healthcare. And we are joined by an incredible guest who's working nationally on Medicare for All. We are going to introduce her in a second. Today, we're by the way, we're going to have a number of episodes on healthcare. So this is only the first. But today we will be talking a little bit about what happened with Luigi Mangione and the reaction in the public around that incident. We'll be talking, of course, about the work that HealthCare Now is doing. We'll be talking about the Trump administration and how we should prepare to think a little bit differently about our goals and what we accomplish. And then we'll also be talking about sort of Medicare itself and what happens if that is not as good. What does that change in terms of the way that we talk about Medicare for All and other things? We'll be talking a little bit about medical debt and other things like that. So we're really looking forward to this conversation. But before we do, let me introduce my industrious co-hosts. I will start with the inimitable Jordan Berg-Powers. If you want to introduce yourself.
Jordan Berg-Powers, he, him. It's nice to see everyone today, especially Jillian, to talk about Healthcare Now and Healthcare for All. And we're excited to dive in deep to make those linkages between both the national stuff that's going on around healthcare and also spend a little bit more time on how we can think about it and move it forward as a whole. So I'm excited about this. It's nice to see you all. I'm in Worcester, Massachusetts, and I have many years working in policy and education and elections.
And the fantastico Jonathan Cohn.
Yeah, Jonathan Cohn, he, him, his, joining from the South End in Boston. And I've been active on a number of progressive issue and electoral campaigns here in Massachusetts for, shockingly to me, over a decade now.
Wonderful. Anna Callahan, she, her, coming at you from Medford. I am also a city councilor in Medford. Done a lot of sort of local politics, but across the country. But I have always been deeply interested in essentially Medicare for All. My mom is British and always, as I was born, she was like, this way that you do it in this country is dumb. So, and with that, I am so excited to have our guest introduce herself, Jillian Mason from HealthCare Now. If you can tell us just a bit about yourself and also a little bit about HealthCare Now, the organization.
Absolutely. So happy to be here with y'all. It's so nice to see old friends from Massachusetts. I am Jillian Mason, as you said. I'm the executive director of HealthCare Now, which is a national organization that's been fighting for 20 years now for a Medicare for all, universal healthcare, single payer, whatever you want to call it, a healthcare system where everybody is in and nobody is out. So I came to this work actually. The way that I know all of you all, right, is that I was in Boston for 20 years organizing in the labor movement. And the way that I came to that work really was actually because I got sick in the middle of my grad school career and went broke and ended up just, feeling powerless and, getting to the end of my rope. And that's when I started telling my healthcare story and started getting involved with organizations that were fighting for healthcare. And by the time I finished grad school, I was ready to be done with the academy and to do some work in the streets. And so that's how I came to this work, was through healthcare and specifically through being a kind of victim of our healthcare system and trying to flip that around. Mm-hmm. But yeah. HealthCare Now, we'll talk a little bit more about, what we do. But in general, our mission is really to defend healthcare for everyone who lives in this country, regardless of their zip code, their income, race, gender identity, really just everyone. So that's what we're working on.
Fantastic. Well, I really want to open today up with just a little short discussion of the events that happened a couple months ago with the assassination of a health insurance CEO and the whole Luigi Mangione story, which I'll tell you what that meant to me was even though I've been a Medicare for All person, like I don't know, as much as anybody, I guess, certainly since 2016. I was shocked by the public reaction. And I guess what it meant to me was that there was just a deeper level of anger and rage that I think had been going on for longer than even I realized. And for me, that means change, right? Hey, let's change that because if people are that angry and, devastated and, if there's that much obvious public sentiment, then we should be able to get some change. So I'm just going to open it up there and see if anybody has any comments to talk a little bit for a moment about what that moment in time like said about the American healthcare and health insurance industry.
If you don't mind me starting off, I think it was not particularly surprising to me. And the reason for that is that every day I open up my inbox at HealthCare Now and I have people telling me their stories about the healthcare system, a lot of them about United Health, because they are definitely one of the worst, right? Can't shy away from that. But I think that the thing that this really reveals to me is just how deep the trauma of our healthcare system goes for people. It cuts so deep. And there are layers of shame that prevent people from talking about it, right? There's this idea in this country that if you can't pull yourself up by your bootstraps, you're doing something wrong. If you don't have good health insurance, your job isn't important. I've actually had people say that to me. There's that. It's just embarrassing for people to talk about, their kind of failure to get healthcare in the system, when in fact it's the system that's failing them, right? So that was not shocking to me. I think it's, really, really important, though. One thing that we know about trauma when we're talking about individuals, but that we forget about our culture is hurt people, right? There's that, and it's true, right? And so in some ways, the shooting is part of a kind of cycle of violence that's related to the violence that the industry has purported on so many people across this country. So that's how I'm seeing it. It's a sad moment, but also, as you said, a really important moment, right? Because people are coming out of the closet and starting to talk about how this is actually impacting.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say just to
you
piggyback
guys
up
to say something. Go ahead, John.
what Jillian said, especially with like the breadth, like kind of how like ubiquitous a lot of the comments were, is that it kind of just shows you about how everybody experiences the health system. It's one of those things that is kind of a kind of, let's say, like universally shared experience that people have, because at the end of the day, if people need to be healthy and like, or in some way, right? Health is something that's like an innately human thing that is shared across people, that if and with the way that the system is structured in the US, everybody has likely had at least one negative experience. And I'd say, like, no matter how good of quality of insurance that you have, you have likely had at least one negative experience with the health insurance system in the US, and the way that creates additional stress for people. Not both, let's say, psychological stress and financial stress.
Which I think really leads to the thing I said on Jillian's podcast, which I just want to say to everyone, that if you feel like 5 episodes or 4 episodes is not enough healthcare content, you can get a lot of really amazing content at HealthCare Now, where they dive into these in a lot of different complexities, in a lot of different ways, a lot of different avenues. So do go to their website to learn more and to listen if you're into that, as well as, of course, listening to our podcast and making sure you share it. But I'll just say I was on there and I said, like, and one of the things I always tell people is, as somebody you're listening, you probably at least are for Medicare for all, or at least for a public option. You're probably for some type of solution that isn't the current situation. And the thing we do when we talk about it is we always go right into the solution. We're like Medicare for all, or a public option, or we gotta like regulate healthcare. But like, one of the things I've learned from conservatives is they never bother talking about solutions. Like, they don't even pretend to have solutions.
Right.
They just get people outraged. And we have this issue which touches everyone. As Jonathan just said, everyone has a bad version of it. The reaction to Luigi proves that everyone's mad. If you have all that anger and all of those bad stories, that's what we should be harnessing. We do not need to get into the weeds with regular people about how much Medicare, is it actually, a Canadian system or the UK system or
What's
Medicare
the
for all,
reimbursement rate?
right? Like that, right? Like, don't waste your time. And I'll tell you, people always want to drag me down into that. Whenever I say like. So whenever I tell people to talk about Medicare for all, I say, don't mention those words. The first thing you have to say is, this system's really effed up and we can do something different. This is dumb. And so many times conservatives will be like, well, what's your solution? And I'll say, not this. We can do better than this. No one does this. No one picks this because it's stupid and we should do it. And there's some really great ideas and we should move towards them, and we should not be complacent and not let them lie to us that this is the best we can do because no one else is doing this, right? Like, I immediately go back to, actually, this sucks. Let's get rid of this. Because that's actually the thing we need to focus on, is the anger and the frustration and the universality of that experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if they can get away with repeal and replace being their slogan, right? Which is like a contentless slogan, right? Like, can't we do that, right? Like, repeal the for-profit insurance thing, replace it with what? I don't know. I have a concept of a plan.
Well put.
Yes.
So while I 100% agree with you, and I think that is great, and I'll be doing that from now on, we are digging into the details today. And I do want to ask you, Jillian, for what Healthcare Now, like, how do you approach things nationally? Like, what is your strategy? What have you learned from doing this for 20 years? What are you doing today? Just talk to us a little bit about Healthcare Now and what you're working on.
Absolutely. So
even if that's mentioning Medicare for all, that's okay.
Honestly, we call it Medicare for all because that's what polls best, right? But probably when that doesn't poll best, we'll call it something else, right? Because it doesn't really matter what it's called. It's something better than what we fucking have, right? Pardon my language. I'm sorry. Do we curse on this podcast?
Don't worry. Well, normally no.
You'll bleep me out.
Okay. We'll put a little beep.
We'll find a creative Medicare for all themed way to bleep that out.
If you could be just like the the heart monitor at a hospital or whatever, like beep, beep, beep.
We'll have a little thing of Bernie saying huge.
Yeah. So Healthcare Now, right? So at Healthcare Now, we started out as this organization just with this mission of, passing some kind of single payer organization, but it's really grown, and I think we've grown to see ourselves as part of a larger health justice movement, right? What they're coming for when they come for healthcare is they're coming for our bodies, and there are so many people in this country whose bodies are under attack right now. So this is really an attack on bodily autonomy, and we're trying to fight back in all sorts of different ways. So we're supporting all sorts of, we're obviously still fighting for Medicare for all, and that bill will be reintroduced this year, and we'll get some co-sponsors, and we continue to increase the number of co-sponsors, right? So we know that somehow the word is getting out, right, through a lot of really good organizing on the ground. But yeah, so we really support people all over the country who are doing grassroots organizing around a couple of different things, not just federal Medicare for all, but state level Medicare for all. And then even some folks who are working on things like municipal resolutions, where they'll go to their city council and, say, Councilor Callahan, we really need Medicare for all in Medford, and so let's pass a resolution through the city council that says so, and that helps us to kind of again build power, slowly but powerfully, and so. So we support folks who are working on those. We support also a lot of folks who are working on just defending the public health systems that we do have, like stopping privatization in Medicare, Medicaid, the VA, which is a system that we don't talk about nearly enough. And the way that we do that is really through a lot of education, both of the public and also training of activists in grassroots organizing. So we have a training program where folks can come in, they can do one training or come for a whole cycle of trainings that'll teach you the kind of basics of healthcare policy and talking about healthcare policy. And then also just like the basics of grassroots organizing. So even if you don't have a healthcare group in your area or in your state, you can always get together with people and do something, right? So there's that. We also have our podcast where we try to educate the public. It's the Medicare for All podcast, not Medicare for All Explained. They're our rivals. Just kidding, but it's a different thing. So yeah, the Medicare for All podcast available on all of your podcasting platforms. It is I think the funniest non-comedy healthcare podcast. Just going today, and of course we've had Jonathan and Jordan on as guests in the past. And then finally, we're working on something that I'm like really, really proud of. This is a project that was sort of conceived by Ben Day. Hey, Ben, I know he listens to the podcast located in Massachusetts. And this is the voices of this is the voices of U.S. healthcare database, right? So when we talk about like this like kind of outpouring of anger, right? If you're sitting at home right now and you are thinking about your healthcare story and you're thinking about where to put it, right? A lot of people are just like kind of unloading on social media, which is really great. That helps to raise the visibility of the thing just in terms of your own personal networks and stuff. That being said, right, like TikTok could be banned like tomorrow or the next day or whatever. So we need a place where these stories can live. And so we have this publicly accessible database of healthcare stories from all over the country. We have over 100 stories right now from, I think, all 50 states. And it is... it's an amazing testament to the depth of the problem, but it also is a great way of engaging people in the fight, right? So when people submit their stories to us, we're able to like introduce them to some of the grassroots organizing that's going on, help them to kind of channel that feeling of powerlessness into a feeling of building power, right? Which is really what.
We'll post that in the show notes. So if anyone's listening to this and you want to send in your story, please do. That link's going to be right below this.
Absolutely. And you'll see in the database, you can, if you're interested in sort of exploring, you can search by the different health conditions people are dealing with, the state that they're in. And if you're a journalist, for example, you can sort by people who are willing to speak with reporters or people who are willing to speak at a public event, right? And so it's just, again, it just demonstrates the depth and the breadth of the problem that we're facing right now. But yeah, another thing that you can do is if you see your friends or other people in your network posting their healthcare stories on social media, just drop a link in the comments to the healthcare database and encourage them to submit their story there as well. So yeah, that is what we are working on. And then in addition to that, we're also going to be working on some fight back because we know that there's a lot coming down from the Trump administration. And I know we're going to talk about that.
What a great segue. So I would love for us to talk about that. There are so many things. It is not like it was 8 years ago where everyone is like, we're going to fight everything. Now, it's very different. And also, I think the Trump administration is just, better set up to accomplish the things that they are hoping to accomplish. So I think we have to be very concerned and prepared to, be able to push back on the things that happen. And so, you as someone who's thought really deeply about what might be coming down the pike, if you can just talk a little bit about that and let us know, what Healthcare Now is thinking about in terms of the Trump administration.
Well, I feel like every time I talk about this, I feel like I should have like a flashlight, like around a campfire, like telling ghost stories or whatever. That's scary. And then the call was coming from inside the Department of Health and Human Services. So Yeah, so I think that what we're looking at really is two things. One is sort of the RFK of it all, right? He's being, nominated obviously for the Secretary of Health and Human Services, for the Secretary of the Department of Health. He would be in charge of all sorts of crazy public health shit that he doesn't really believe in, which is controversy, right? So we all know, I mean, this man's a maniac. I'm sorry. Like we did a deep dive for our podcast into his past and it was wild. I mean, we know about the things with vaccines, but like this man literally believes that like there are certain kinds of weed killers that are making kids trans. I mean, he believes in chemtrails. He believes in just like he believes that HIV is not the cause of AIDS. And we've seen the consequences of his beliefs, right, when they're implemented in public policy in places like American Samoa, right, where people just died, right, because they listened. So there's that. That's like sort of the health end, right? It's less on the healthcare end. The healthcare end is even more terrifying to me, and that's the Dr. Oz of it all, right? And so we know that when Dr. Oz was running for Senate, right, that the plan that he proposed and the plan that he's sort of stuck by since then is basically like a Medicare Advantage for all. People might not know, but Medicare Advantage is basically the privatization of the Medicare thing. So if you see like on ads on TV, right, telling you like zero copay, better than traditional Medicare, whatever, that's a private insurance company that's trying to sell you a private plan. They're taking Medicare dollars out of our national coffers, right, and they're spending it on private insurers.
And that
We're
sounds
then going
like
on.
charter schools, right?
Precisely. Yeah. I always make that comparison because it's exactly the same thing. Yeah. So, anyway, so Dr. Oz's plan really is about privatization and about cutting Medicaid reimbursement rates as well. So his first plan will probably be to gut Medicaid, and then we'll move on to Medicare. So we can look forward to a lot of privatization, a lot of cuts, tax starving the system so that it is no longer functional. So that's what's coming up.
But it'll have the name Medicare, so people will have this belief that it's government not working the same way that they've, this is their MO. Conservatives will destroy public institutions, and then they'll say, I don't know who broke this, but give us all the money. And then the media will say, we also don't know who broke this, and we can't have any historical knowledge about who might have broke this. But what we can tell you is that these two people are saying opposite things, and you get to decide. One of them is saying something truthful. One of them is saying something bonkers. We won't give any historical accurate information about this or any facts whatsoever, but you get to decide based on what your limited knowledge of the healthcare. Like, it's the same MO over and over again. And it's just like, and so we know that that's what they're going to run on Medicare.
Dude, I feel like it's kind of even worse than that when they're like, it's not that they're like, oh, the system is broken, we don't know who broke it. They're like, the system has always been broke. Right? Like it has always been this way.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It was private insurance was sent down from God, and and Medicare was implemented by Jesus. And
In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Etna.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think that is a little closer. And even in education, like they defund, they like make it impossible to do a good job at something. And then they're like, see, look how terrible it always has been.
Yeah. See standardized testing. See No Child Left Behind. See everything Obama did for 8 years to destroy public education.
And I think what this speaks to, I think, as well, especially which is some of the toxic natures of privatization with like Medicare, all the Medicare Advantage plans, or even like the need for Medicare supplementals when rather than like say expanding what Medicare covers for things. It reminds me of the often toxic nature in which choice gets employed in politics, where there are many very real important spaces in the public realm where choice is a value. And I typically say, like, if there is something about self-expression, choice has value. Nobody is engaging in the matter of self-expression by choosing a health insurance plan. And like with something like health insurance, all that the difference is how much do you pay and how much does it cover? And those are purely quantitative differences between them. And if the only differences at work are like basically how much is it and how much do you pay, there is no reason for choice to be a concept because choice is not a real, it is not a real, like it's not a real choice that you are making. It is a choice based on your financial abilities and risk assessment.
I have to say that this whole like choice, like we have never had employer paid health insurance, so we have to pay for it ourselves. And I hate the process of choosing so much because I'm choosing between them screwing us over in one way and them screwing us over in another way. And there is no them not screwing us over choice.
Yeah.
And what I hate the most is they force me to choose. They force me to choose the particular way in which they're going to totally
Yeah.
screw up. And it just makes me so angry. So this idea that I love the choice, like, oh my God, I would do anything to never have to choose between those things.
It's like the thing that I think ordinary people get, right? But that politicians forget when they say things about choices. Like, we are actually not the consumers in this analogy. We're the commodity, right? Like, it's our our bodies are the commodity and they're making money off of our bodies, right? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not like you're going to be in the you're not going to be sitting in the ambulance having a heart attack and being like, but what's the copay on the nearest hospital? Could we go to maybe the furthest hospital away so that I can save some money or whatever? It just doesn't happen that way. It's not
Let
how
me
life.
bring us back for a minute to like the Trump administration before we move on to the next point, and just ask you, what else should we be thinking about in terms of the Trump administration? Are there any other kind of big bullet points that you think people should be aware of?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are the issues that people are largely already aware of, but that relating to healthcare, no doubt all of the anti-immigrant sentiment, whatever kind of a legislative or policy form it takes, is going to mean that a lot of immigrants are going to be cut off from healthcare in this country, and that's bullshit. We all know that immigrants pay more in than they get back into our federal systems, and it's just. Yeah, it's just not right that we leave people out in the cold. And then the other things would be like gender affirming care. Like, I'm coming to you from and reproductive health care. And I mean, in that regard, like, hi, I'm coming to you from Texas, and I'm your future, a state where you can't get, reproductive health care at all. We don't have abortions here, and you can actually, if you lived in Texas and you gave me $50 to get a bus out of state, right? You could actually be charged with a crime. And so I think that those are things, at Healthcare Now, we believe strongly that everyone has the right to the healthcare that, not just the healthcare that can save your life, but the healthcare that can save your dignity as well. And so gender affirming care, reproductive health care, these are the things that we are entitled to as well. So when we think about what we're going to be fighting back against, it's going to be a broad range of things. And that's why we're setting up in the process right now, setting up a rapid response network that folks who are broadly interested in health and healthcare on the national level can sign up for and get action alerts for ways that they can take action. It's called the Health Emergency Action Team, HEAT. When they try to leave us out in the cold, we turn up the heat. And we'll be unrolling that on February 1st, hopefully. So
That is amazing. Jordan?
So I just want to say again, just really quickly about, trans affirming care. I think, one of the things we're seeing already is that, like, it's already the case that most practitioners could actually be giving hormones to people who would like them. It's actually a regular thing that happens. One of my good friend's sons had trouble growing, and he was getting hormones to help him grow. That is a normal course of action. We don't think
That was
about that.
happening when I was a kid.
Right, right. For many
For
decades,
boys,
this has been
not for
going on
girls.
for boys.
For boys.
Right, but and then for women also, hormone replacement has been a part of the postmenopause things. We are already doing these things, and the way in which the sort of insidiousness that the media has gone along with this attack on people who are small in number of actual human beings, is to make it sound like there's many more. Right, we know from polling people think there's many more trans people than there actually are, and that this is somehow something that isn't done all the time, which it is and has been done for a long time. And the reason that's important to you, you might not care. You're like, what do I care? Is that's what happened with women's care. That's what, right? Like I always tell people, abortion used to be common in every part of history. Jesus was walking around and people were having abortions and he didn't have anything to say about it. Just for shit to, like he could have said no, but that was a common thing that happened back then and he didn't. Abortions have been around as long as people have been getting together with each other. People and so the sort of thinking that it's abnormal to do something to treat women's health care. That's a new creation. That is a modern creation to roll back basic ideas of humanity. And they have done that to women. They have done that to trans people. They will do that to you. Like you already agree to a subpar set. You already agree to do really dumb. How we all accept that when we get sick, we ask, how sick are we? That's something that we don't have to accept, but we've all accepted it as a normal course of our life to say, how sick am I before I go get care? Obama literally said to people, the thing, we have to make it more cost. We have to drive up costs so people don't access it as much, right? Because it's too expensive. Like that is something that we've baked in. We've already baked in a lack of your humanity. So do not think that these things where they're taking away modern medicine, that is the things that we've been doing for decades, and they take it away from you or take it away from someone who you don't know and say, because it's abnormal, and you're gonna think they're gonna do it to you. And so these things all intersect with each other, right? And so that's why it's really important that you get involved. That's why it's really important that you go to healthcare now. It's why it's really important that you get these the sort of national understanding of these things. And it's why it's important that we do everything possible in Massachusetts to shore these things up.
Absolutely. So I know we're running just a couple minutes over. We only have a couple minutes left, and I'm just going to ask you about. Before I do, boy, this is going to be a late mid roll.
Sort of mid roll.
It's sort of mid, like late mid. If you're listening to this podcast, you understand that like these kinds of deep dives into these subjects are something that you're not going to get anywhere else. Our media doesn't really support, as we talked about just earlier today, does not support sort of the needs of the vast majority of the residents of Massachusetts or of America. And we are trying to fill some of those gaps. So if you appreciate it, spread it to your friends, and also please, there's a link below. You can donate. We really appreciate your donations. They go to helping us get this out to more people. We have some wonderful young folks that we pay. None of us get paid. We pay to do graphics, to do a little bit of video editing, to do our social media posting and those things. So please do donate to the show. Any comments on that, Jonathan? You look like you're
I wanted to make the comment of pay a monthly premium to the show. We do not deny access to any of the episodes.
Well put. And on that note, my final question for you is really about, you mentioned right before we started to hit record that, there are some sort of stopgap measures that people are doing around medical debt and other things. And if you could tell us a little bit about those, that would be great.
Yeah, there'll probably be, medical debt is a great point of intervention, right? Because, so many people have just been ruined by medical debt in this country. And so obviously relieving medical debt actually does nothing to fix the system. So I'm not gonna, whatever. That being said, what it does do is to actually relieve the pressure on people's lives. And I think that when we think about stopgap measures, it's like, I had this conversation with Bernie Sanders. Do I have time to tell this story? I'm just going to tell it really quick.
It's fine.
All right. So I had this. We were on a group call with Bernie Sanders, and I asked him about how he had sort of, walked back a little bit from Medicare for All, and was talking about some of the other things like relieving medical debt, or trying to, increase the number of people who are covered by Medicare by lowering the age limit, right? And so I said, well, what does that mean for people who are fighting for Medicare for All? And he said, you have to keep the vision of Medicare for All alive, right? But at the same time, we have to do everything that we can to help people who are hurting right now. And so I would really encourage people just to, be keeping an eye on their neighbors and keeping an eye on their communities during this time. So, there'll be some kind of, like I said, some kind of federal legislation to try to relieve medical debt that folks can support. There'll be some like policy solutions, but I'd really encourage people to get involved in their communities. You are going to have, no matter where you live in America, there will be a group of immigrants in your community who are going to be cut off from their health care. There will be people who are cut off from Medicaid, or whose Medicaid is going to be cut. So, there will be people who need abortions who can't get access to them. And, there are underground networks everywhere, people who are helping to underground and above, depending on where you live, who are helping people to access abortion. So I guess I just wanted to say, like, don't sleep on that, because we have an obligation to do whatever we can to improve the terrible material conditions of our lives right now. So yeah, keep an eye on your neighbors, keep an eye on your community during the next 4 years, because there are going to be a lot of folks who need you.
Wonderful. Any final thoughts from my compatriots here before we go?
I think, like, just again, lead with the stories, lead with the anger, harness it, encourage people to just not like what they currently like, and not just feel, and let's figure out how to finally get this done.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just say thank you, Jillian, for all the great work that
Yeah.
HealthCare Now do.
I really appreciate that. And can I just say that I genuinely love each and every one of you. And it is so good to spend some time virtually back in Massachusetts, where you have women's reproductive care. So it's nice.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you so, so much. We look forward, folks that are listening, please look at, submit your stories to HealthCare Now with a link below. And you can look forward to a few more episodes where we are going to be covering more about healthcare in America. And until then, have a great week. And thanks to everybody for listening. Hey there. Thanks so much for watching us on YouTube. Please like and subscribe. And it would be amazing if you would also subscribe to us on your favorite podcast player. Just look for Incorruptible Massachusetts wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks so much.